I am old now. My hands shake when I write, and my eyes are not what they used to be. But my memory is sharp. That is my curse. I remember everything, and the galaxy would prefer that I forget. My name is Keth Varun. I am a Delvani, and I was once an ambassador to the Galactic Concord. I served for 40 years. I attended over 300 diplomatic sessions. I shook hands with leaders from 1,000 species, and I watched, from a front row seat, as the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy pushed a quiet, smiling species past the point of no return. I am writing this because someone has to. The official records have been cleaned. The speeches have been edited. The powerful species that caused all of this would like you to believe it came out of nowhere, that humanity simply went mad one day and the galaxy suffered for it. That is a lie. What happened to the galaxy was not madness. It was a receipt, and every species that is now living in the ruins helped write it. Let me begin at the beginning. Humanity entered the galactic community roughly 200 years before everything fell apart. They came late. Almost every other spacefaring species had been part of the Concord for thousands of years. Humans arrived with slow ships, basic technology, and an almost childlike excitement about meeting other civilizations. They wanted to trade. They wanted to learn. They wanted friends. The Concord gave them none of these things. They were classified as a Tier 9 civilization, the lowest rank in the system. Their seat in the Grand Assembly was in the back row, behind a pillar. Their trade routes were the worst in the galaxy, running through empty, resource-poor systems that nobody else wanted. When their first ambassador, a woman named Adieze Okonkwo, stood before the assembly and requested fair trade agreements, scientific exchange, and mutual defense partnerships, the chamber responded with silence, then laughter. Then they moved on to the next item on the agenda. Ambassador Okonkwo smiled, sat down, and took notes. That should have been the first warning. Over the next 2 centuries, the galaxy treated humanity the way a schoolyard treats the new kid who refuses to fight back. Not with one great act of cruelty, but with 1,000 small ones, delivered so casually and so constantly that most species stopped noticing they were doing it. Human colonies were given territory, and then had that territory reassigned to more powerful species when something valuable was discovered beneath the soil. Trade tariffs on human goods were set at 40 times the standard rate. When the Krithicon Syndicate dumped industrial waste on 3 human colony worlds, poisoning the water and soil, the Concord ruled that no violation had occurred. When a Veltar warship destroyed a human science vessel in disputed space, ending the lives of 2,000 civilians who were studying a dying star, the Concord issued what they called a note of concern, nothing more. The families of those 2,000 people received nothing, not an apology, not a single credit in compensation, nothing. And through all of it, humanity kept sending diplomats. They kept filing complaints. They kept showing up to every assembly session, sitting behind that pillar, raising their hands, and being ignored. I remember asking a human colleague once, a trade attaché named David, why they did not push back. He was a calm man, always smiling, always polite. He looked at me for a long time before answering. Because we are keeping count, he said. I did not understand what he meant. I wish I had. 15 years before everything changed, I was assigned to Earth as a cultural attaché. It was considered a minor posting, almost an insult. Nobody important went to Earth. I expected to find a broken, demoralized world full of a species that had accepted its place at the bottom. What I found was something else entirely. Earth was building. Every university was full. Every research center was running day and night. Factories operated in 3 shifts. Young humans were studying fields of science I had never heard of. Disciplines they had invented on their own after being denied access to the Great Archive on Celthus Prime, the galaxy's largest library, which had refused them entry because their linguistic structures were deemed insufficient. I visited a school one afternoon. The children were 12 years old. They were running simulated fleet engagements, coordinating formations, and analyzing tactical scenarios. I asked the teacher if this was a military academy. She laughed and said no, it was a regular school. Every school taught this. I looked at those children, laughing and competing with each other, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I could not name it then. I can name it now. It was the feeling of standing in a room full of coiled springs, and not knowing which one would release first. I attended a memorial that year. It was for the miners who had been lost on Juno 7, where Krython security forces had ended a labor dispute by ending the laborers. 6,000 humans. Gone. The Concorde's response had been a fine, so small it would not have covered the cost of a single shuttle. Thousands of people gathered for that memorial. They stood in the rain, holding candles, saying nothing. No shouts, no anger, no demands for justice, just silence, and a single phrase repeated in low voices throughout the crowd. Not yet. I asked my liaison, a woman named Priya, what it meant. She looked at me with an expression I could not read and said, "It means not yet." That was all she would say. The final provocation came on an ordinary Tuesday. The Valen hegemony, the most powerful military force in the Concorde, decided that humanity's growing network of colonies was expanding beyond their authorized boundaries. They issued a demand: abandon 14 colony worlds within 30 days, or face corrective action. Humanity sent a peace envoy. 12 unarmed ships, flying under Concorde peace banners, carrying diplomats and their families. Among the passengers were the grandchildren of Adayeze Okonkwo, humanity's first ambassador to the galaxy. The Valen destroyed all 12 ships. 15,000 people, gone in an instant. The Valen broadcast footage of the wreckage across every galactic network, calling it a lesson for lesser species. The Concorde held an emergency vote. 1,186 species voted that the Valen's actions were proportionate. 3 species voted against. Their names were not recorded. I was in the chamber when the result was announced. I was watching the human delegation. Their lead ambassador, a man named Elias Kane, was sitting perfectly still. When the numbers appeared on the display, he did not flinch. He did not speak. He looked at the result for exactly 4 seconds. I counted. Then he stood up, buttoned his coat, and walked out of the chamber without a word. In 200 years of galactic diplomacy, I had never seen a human leave a room without saying something. They always had one more argument, one more proposal, one more reason to stay and talk. Not this time. Elias Kane walked out, and the door closed behind him, and the sound of that door was the loudest thing I have ever heard in my life. Within 6 hours, every human representative across the galaxy sent an identical message to their host governments. One line. No greeting. No signature. This concludes our diplomatic relationship. There will be no further communication. And then every channel went silent. For 30 days, there was nothing. No signals from Earth. No transmissions from their colonies. Their trade ships did not arrive. Their relay beacons went offline. Their borders went completely dark. The galaxy reacted the way you might expect. The Valen laughed. The Concorde debated sending a patrol to check on the humans, then voted against it. Not worth the fuel, they said. I did not laugh. I went to the Delvani Senate and begged them to prepare. I told them something was coming. They asked me what evidence I had. I told them about the schools, the factories, the memorials, the silence. They laughed at me too. On the 31st day, every border of human space opened at the same time. What came out was not the modest defense fleet the Concorde had permitted them. It was an armada. Thousands upon thousands of warships, built in hidden shipyards beneath oceans, inside hollowed-out asteroids, deep within the atmospheres of gas giants. Humanity had been building for over a century, quietly, patiently. While the galaxy laughed at them, they had been preparing for the day the laughter stopped being tolerable. Their technology was unlike anything in the galactic database. They had been denied access to the archive, denied scientific exchange, denied every opportunity to learn from others. So they had invented their own science, their own weapons, their own way of waging a conflict that no species in the galaxy had ever seen before. The Valen border fleet, 10,000 warships strong, was disabled in 9 hours. Not destroyed, disabled. Engines shut down, weapons removed, crews left alive in drifting ships. Humanity did not waste life when it was not necessary. This was not rage. I want to make that very clear. What I saw in the reports, what I heard from witnesses, was not the behavior of a species consumed by anger. It was the behavior of a species that had made a decision. Within 40 days, the Valen hegemony, the most feared military power in the galaxy for 6,000 years, surrendered unconditionally. Humanity did not respond to the surrender. They had no diplomats anymore. The rest of the galaxy understood very quickly what was happening. 12 species immediately tried to open diplomatic channels. Humanity did not answer. The Krytha Syndicate evacuated their capital system. The Jorvon, who had been raiding human border colonies for decades, tried to flee to the galactic rim. Humanity found them. Every enslaved human was recovered. The Concord tried to assemble a joint response. It collapsed before it began. No species wanted to be the first to stand against the humans. They had all seen what happened to the Valen. I tried to help. I traveled to the human border and transmitted a personal plea for dialogue. I received one reply, text only, from an unidentified source. Ambassador Varun, we remember your kindness. For that reason, the Delvani will not be harmed. Do not test this goodwill by asking us to stop. We are not stopping. We are finishing. I read that message 14 times. Then I put my head in my hands and I wept. Not from relief, though I was relieved. I wept because I finally understood what "not yet" had meant. It had meant exactly what it said. Not yet, but someday. And someday had arrived. What happened next is the part the galaxy truly cannot accept. Humanity did not build an empire. They did not install themselves as rulers. They did not seek revenge in the way the galaxy understood revenge. They dissolved the Galactic Concord. In its place, they established something called the Terran Accord, built on a single foundational principle that was carved into the wall of every courthouse, every embassy, every government building. No species shall be made to suffer for the crime of being weaker. Every species that had exploited any lower-ranked civilization was required to pay reparations, not to humanity, to every species they had ever wronged. The Great Archive was open to all, unconditionally. An independent judiciary was created, staffed not by humans but by species that had historically held no power. Humanity did not even take a leadership seat. They built the system they had asked for 200 years ago, when Adawenze Okonkwo stood before the assembly with an open hand and was laughed at. They built the galaxy they had always wanted. The only difference was that now, behind every law and every agreement, sat a truth that no one could ignore. Humanity had asked nicely for 2 centuries. They would not ask again. I visited Earth one last time, 3 years ago. I am an old man now, slow and tired, and I knew it would be my final trip. I walked through a park in one of their cities and watched their children playing. They were laughing, chasing each other, falling down and getting up again. They were kind to each other. They shared their food. They helped the smaller ones climb the tall structures. I watched them and I thought, these are the same species. The ones who laugh in parks, and the ones who brought the Valen to their knees in 9 hours. The ones who share food with strangers. And the ones who spent a century building a hidden armada in absolute silence. They are the same people. That is what the galaxy never understood. Humanity was never weak. Humanity was patient. And patience, when it finally runs out, is the most terrifying force in the universe. The galaxy called them primitive, called them pets, took their worlds, mocked their culture, ignored their dead, and laughed while doing it. And through all of it, humanity kept one promise. A promise the galaxy never heard, because it was only whispered among themselves, in the rain, at candlelit memorials, in the quiet space between their tears. Not yet. Not yet. Until one day, the answer changed, and by then, it was far too late to say sorry.